Book of Apollo. Being the heavenly administration of Apollo, an Etherian god. Chapter I. 1 Apollo, son of Jehovah, resident of Pshimus, in Etheria, and god of Sufid and Donga and Ta, in the south province of Buru, Orion chief, controller of vortices, said to I, Apollo, once immortal, proclaim first, wisdom, peace and patience unto all men, and comprehensive judgment whereof I speak. Second, to perceive the reason of things, as to what seemeth to have been, and of what cometh after. 3. For the Great Spirit is all harmony and perfection, abounding in time and in worlds to accomplish all possible imaginings. Wherefore, be ye magnified in conception, not judging by the little understanding of mortals. 4. So that he that asserteth harmony being more to the order of Jehovah than that which is ill-formed or out of time, have little reason to prove his assertion before a wise man. As one may assert that ripe fruit is nearer perfection than that which is green, which assertion is self-evident without proof, so, in the understanding of gods in the management of worlds, are things past and present, not things past and present in fact, but more like the immature and the mature. 5. Since, then, man perceiveth that words, at best, are but slow and coarse representations of the soul's conception of things, how much farther distant lieth the God's wisdom beyond the reach of mortal understanding. Remember, O man, that couldst thou in a moment of time recollect all thou hadst ever learned, thou wouldst be wise indeed. Wert thou in tune with thyself, such would be thy wisdom. To advance in such direction, whereby man becometh attuned, first with himself, then with his immediate surroundings, then with the magnitude of worlds, and then with Jehovah, so that he moveth, acteth, and comprehendeth harmoniously, is to become one with the Father. 6. Which condition awaiteth all men, and is called in high heaven, nirvana, because, to him that hath attained it, things past and things to come are as an open book. He can look back to his own beginning in the world, and even beyond, and whithersoever he directeth his eye, he can see and hear even as if the matter now were. 7. Marvel not, O man, that the gods reveal the words and signs of things long since perished corporeally. The proofs he could give, thou couldst not understand, for the basis of spiritual entity lieth not within the measure of the corporeal senses. Nevertheless, Jehovah hath given thee comparisons. As a portrait of a man showeth his looks even after his corporeal body hath perished. And yet, the picture is but a representative. To the spirit, a corporeal body is but a representative, being a manifested production of a spirit. 8. As out of corporeal things a new thing is produced and born into the world, so out of Jehovah is born the spirit of man. Neither leadeth the corporeal the spirit, nor the spirit the corporeal. But Jehovah doeth all. Think not, then, that when the corporeal body is dead and mouldereth back to original elements, that in like manner the spirit of man will resolve itself back into Jehovah, for spirit is not bound by similar rules. As the corporeal body groweth by aggregating to itself, so not so groweth the spirit of man, but by the opposite, which is giving away. 9. Remember, O man, the more thou puttest forth thy soul to give light and wisdom to others, the more thou receivest. Wherein thou shalt comprehend in the reason of things everlasting life to the spirit of man. So also, to him that desireth to comprehend Jehovah, let him describe the All-Highest constantly. To him that desireth to comprehend the Etherian worlds, the homes of spirits long risen in nirvana, let him describe them. Fear not, O man, that thou shalt err. All the imagery thou canst devise is surpassed millions of times in the magnitude of the Father's kingdoms. Till thou canst shoot an arrow without striking the air, fear not for thy weak thoughts shooting amiss in Jehovah's worlds. Chapter E. 1. I, Apollo, earth-born, of the continent Pan, submerged by Aph, the Orion chief, by Jehovah's command, proclaim in the name of the Father, Creator of worlds, peace and wisdom unto all nations and tribes of men first, against all vanity and self-conceit in the souls of men, wherein every cycle asserteth itself wise and great and learned, and the ancients, fools. 2. For the evidence of wisdom lieth not in learning one thing only, but in the adaptation of man to Jehovah and his works. in which measure, the modern and the ancient stand not upon their judgment in the matter, but by Jehovah's. 3. For if the ancient was not perfect in his place, neither art thou, O man, of this day. But before the gods are all the ages adapted as Jehovah created them. Judge not him, for thy judgment is limited. That which was profitable to the soul of man, the Father revealed to the ancients. That which is profitable to the soul of man today, revealeth he this day. 4. For which reason I, his Son, am come to fulfill my labor, even as all men, in time, must complete that which hath been assigned them. 5. To rebuke vanity and self-conceit in them that perceive not wisdom in things long past, but applaud themselves without just measure before Jehovah. Wherein the gods perceive their vanity, and pity them, hoping rather to exalt their minds, that they may learn to perceive the Father's hand manifested in all things. 6. Turn thine eyes inward, O man, and look at the spirit of things. Make thyself as a god looking down on a new earth, where man hath been quickened into life and attained to strength and learning. Behold his palaces and temples. His work in stone and iron, and gold and silver. His knowledge of the sun and moon and stars. With written books to read. With clothes for the body and shoes for the feet. With great generals, and armies of soldiers. And with the land cultivated. 7. Are these civilized? And war abounding? By what right hast thou made thyself a judge, O man? Who hath measured the inhabitants of the earth and found them pure and wise? Do more people now live on the land in peace and happiness than in many of the cycles past? Because thou art different in many excellencies, thou shalt also remember that many great inventions are forgotten. The world hath been peopled over many times, and many times laid desolate. 8. Who hath been the chief enemy to man? Who is his chief enemy today? Is it not thyself? Think not, O man, that because a few people perceive a higher light the world is wise and good before the gods. For in all ages there have been a few. Yea, today, there are a few more in number than in the ancient days. And this is the sum of the enlightenment of the world. 9. Hear me, O man of earth, and ye angels of heaven. I proclaim harmony, symmetry and music. I am of the days of the fountain of these talents descending to mortals. I was as a shapely stone in Jehovah's edifice, and by hard toil a fashioner of the flesh mold of man and woman. 10. As the ear of one man heareth music, and he crieth out with delight a tune. A tune. And as the ear of another man heareth music, and he cannot discern, and he crieth out a noise. A hideous noise. Wherefore, then, shall ye not judge them, and say the one hath an ear for music, and the other not? The one is one with the music. The other, being discordant himself, declareth there is no tune, but only noise. To which will ye give preference in judgment as to music? 11. Who hath not beholden Jehovah, the All-Person? Who is it that crieth out, I behold them not? No harmony, no symmetry, no music, no complete whole? And to which will ye give preference in judgment? Is not the judgment of the perceiver higher than he who perceiveth not? 12. This declare I of Jehovah, that in all ages there are many who perceive the All-Person, and many who deny him. If, then, the lack of an ear for music maketh a man dumb to a tune, is it not the lack of spiritual harmony that causeth man to perceive not the everlasting presence of Jehovah, the All-Person? 13. Hear me, O angels and men. Can a man learn to sing who heareth not the harmony of a tune? How much less, then, can man, or the spirits of the dead, harmonize with the eternal whole if they perceive him not? Chapter 3. 1. I, Apollo, Jehovah's son, proclaim an age when men on earth considered not harmony, nor symmetry, nor music, as gods. 2. And Jehovah's voice came to me in the Etherean firmament, and place of Shemus, saying 3. Apollo, my son, thou god of Sud, god of Donga, god of Ta, behold the red star, the earth, she cometh through thy dominions. Go thou to her with thy hosts, a sufficient number, and give her a new god, and call his name Apollo. 4. Behold, neither men nor angels on the red star comprehend the harmony of my works. And because of their own inharmony they deny me, being blind to my person. Go thou, my son, and make them idolaters of harmony, symmetry and music, for a long season, that they may become organically attuned from the time of their birth upward. 5. I said, I perceive thy wisdom, O Jehovah. And I called together 100 millions of thy sons and daughters, and told them what thou hadst said. With one accord, they said, we have examined the red star since the time of when, and we perceive truly, the time hath come for thy labor, O Apollo. 6. I said, send an Oniah to the heaven of the earth and deliver her God and lords and all persons capable of the second resurrection. And say ye to God and his lords, thus saith Apollo, son of Jehovah, and God of 3 ethereal worlds, greeting in the name of the Father, and love unto you all. For your glorious work I have assigned 7 terres in Donga. Thither gather ye your hosts, where is prepared a place of rest and comfort. The earth and her heaven shall be left in darkness for 30 of her days, having neither God nor lords. 7. So my legions departed for the earth in an Etherian ship of fire, led by Tuan, goddess of Proking, a place of great learning in the Etherian mountains of Hortonid. And they delivered according to my decrees, and the earth was without a god and lords for 30 days. 8. And the voice of Jehovah came to me again, saying, hear thy Creator, O my son, thou that sprangest from the land long since submerged, who has spanned many of my worlds. Behold, the legions of Su and his mighty resurrections are still preserved to mortals and angels earthbound, of the gods and goddesses who danced and sang before men, and of the uneven match betwixt spirits and gods. 9. Profiting in this, the people of the red star have become rich in rites and ceremonies, and preferring the swift-footed to the slow, the nimble to the clumsy, the Louis have well laid out the road to thy success. 10. So, I perceived beforehand how I should proceed when I landed in the lower heaven and her earth. 11. When the time came, I departed, still remembering my native star with well-treasured pride. And that all things should express the labor Jehovah put upon me, my Oniah excelled in beauty all other Etherian vessels that had ever descended to the earth. 12. How shall I comprehend thy magnitude, O Jehovah? What is the journey of a god before thee? We build a ship for 100 millions, and are vain of its size and beauty. But when we launch out into thy Etherian realms, we fain would hide our faces in shame of our vanity. We sail through 1,000 of thy crystal worlds and talk of great distances, but the mirror of thy boundless creation lieth still before us. We recall the red star, our native home, a single gem amidst the countless millions thou hast cast into the universe, and we are speechless because of thy awful extent. 13. Wherein hast thou not excelled thyself, O Jehovah? In one moment, we behold thy vastness. In another, thy microscopic hand in the smallest etheric wave, and in the spear of grass down on the swift corporeal stars. We applaud thee for thy handiwork, and yet ere our thoughts have overrun the smallest part, thou turnest our eyes inward to the soul of things, an endless wonder. 14. How shall I comprehend thy designs, O Jehovah? Thou drivest me back to the time thy angels came and stood man upright, saying, be thou a man, and be thou a woman. But they would not. 15. Again and again, thy pitying hand stood them up, and thy voice came, saying, talk, O man. Come, thou shalt help to perfect thyself. But man was slow in perceiving wisdom. That which came to his flesh he loved. 16. I remember the earth, O Father. Men and women with long hair hanging down, and hands with claw nails, fierce and warlike, and hair in tufts and short curled, whose eyes were drawn down like a lion's, and mouth wide and falling open, like a dog that is tired. 17. Therefore thou hast called me, O Jehovah. And I perceive thy double purpose, for a man left alone would select and mate, and evolve to terrible war. And thou storest here an idol to unfit him for cruel deeds. 18. So, from thy Etherian realms, wherein for 50,000 years thy gods and goddesses had trained me to comprehend the discipline of thy created heavens, I came, descending, down to the red star, where thou first quickened me into being, that I might fulfill thy mandates. 19. Thy hand took me up, thy hand sent me down. I had learned not to fear. The tree of faith had grown in me. I knew the secret of all power. As a mortal goeth into a dark cavern, where the air is damp and unacceptable to the nose, so came my hosts, O Jehovah, out of Etheria into the vortex of the earth, the dull atmosphere. 20. Thy voice came to me, saying, Go round the earth with thy own ear, my son. Stir up the atmospherenes. They that know no higher heaven. Behold, they have mutinied against my God and lords. Have rejected my preferred wisdom. Their delight is in war and the deeds of mortals. As men on earth gather round to witness beasts in battle, so gather these countless millions of spirits to witness kingdoms of mortals in war, and fire, and plunder. And by their presence urge men to cruelty and cunning horrors. Chapter IV. 1. Hear me, O man, and angels. From my words learn to be wise and deep perceiving. He who standeth in darkness, seeth not. The time of Jehovah, none can comprehend. In the light should be the delight of all men. But who practiseth to his highest knowledge? Before my days, time was no nearer the beginning of the universe than now. There were men who believed that with death all would be ended to every man. And Jehovah sent angels to prove them in their folly. And though they saw them, and talked with them face to face, many would not believe. 2. And in the lower heaven they were the same. They would not believe in a higher heaven. And though Ethereans came to them to prove them in their folly, and talked with them face to face, yet many would not believe. 3. I searched the disbelievers, to understand their souls. And I found they were begotten in inharmony. They prided themselves in their wisdom. But that they called wisdom was as a serpent in the soul. 4. Jehovah spake to me, saying, Hear thy Creator, O my son, in Atmospheria thou shalt appoint 10,000 lords, with 10,000 kingdoms. And the earth and the inhabitants thereof shall be divided between them. 5. And thou shalt build a new kingdom in heaven, and call it God, and it shall be thy judgment seat, with a council of 100,000 men and women. 6. And all thy lords shall be called Apollo. And they shall inspire men to make images of stone and wood. And the images shall have short arms and long legs. And nails instead of claws on the fingers, and well-formed mouths, with shape for motion of the cheeks. 7. And thy lord shall find the Louis who have been preparing these matters by birth. And the Louis shall lead the angels around about amongst mortals, finding the most comely-formed men and women and young children. And when they have thus chosen them, they shall report the matter to the lords, and they shall send Ethereans to those mortals who are selected, and they shall be quickened by signs and miracles. 8. And it shall be proven before all the nations of the earth, and their kings and queens and governors, that the comeliness of the forms are pleasant in my sight, wherefore I come to them. And those who are thus selected shall sing and dance by entrancement. So that kings and queens shall be overcome by the achievements. And those that dance shall be made to float in the air, and sail about in the dance. 9. For I will turn the judgment of man to beautify himself. And, in so doing, he shall learn to perceive beauty and harmony in my works. Chapter V. 1. Think not, O man, the gods always deliver the nations of the earth in a day or by miracles. They go to the foundation of a matter. They make man a servant to help deliver himself. They stir up the nations in rites and ceremonies first. Then come after, and appropriate the rites and ceremonies. And the women look on, receiving the spirit of the matter in their souls, the which entaileth on their offspring that which is desired by the gods. 2. With the hosts of high heaven, unseen by mortals, the lords stir up the whole world. In one generation, behold, a new race is born. Man is unfitted for dangerous war, and no longer the delight of drudges hanging around. And the drudges, and the familiars, turn from the peaceful earth to them stale and unprofitable and bloody entertainments, to find their own petty kingdoms broken down and gone. 3. Be wise, O man, and ye angels of earth. hear the voice of thy brother, God of three worlds. I will tell thee a great secret. These are the words of thy Creator. Man and woman are procreators. Whom they beget, are theirs, saith Jehovah. Not for a day, but forever. Take heed of thy offspring, O woman. Take heed, O man. Wilt thou be entailed with to pull thee down? Wilt thou choose offspring to glorify Jehovah? 4. Have not thy people boasted, O earth? Have they not said, O the poor ancients? What of them? Will they turn away from the idols of Apollo, and set up on their own account? Can the people hand down a name and models to live forever? 5. So I founded Go in the place Hord had been, extending over Japheth, Shem and Ham. And the rest of the atmosphere in heaven I divided amongst my 10,000 lords and lordnesses, whom I selected and ordained in the manner of the ancients. 6. And the lords established themselves in kingdoms, both on earth and in heaven. And they inspired kings and queens to erect images in the temples, and the images were given a name signifying harmony, symmetry and music, Apollo. And the names varied in many countries, because of the languages of the people. But the significance was that these three entities comprised the All-Light, the Creator, Jehovah. 7. And mortals were taught by the inspiration of angels how to make the images, for there were no corporeans sufficiently perfect for models. 8. According to the perfection of the images, so were they reckoned favored by Jehovah. And the sign of Jehovah's approval was manifested in the time of the sacred dance given by the Suis selected. Which was, if the whirling dance caused many women to fall down by enchantment, then was Jehovah pleased. 9. Hear me, O man. The enchantment of the women was what the Lords desired, for the impression of the soul of woman shapeth the unborn child. 10. Wherefore, they worshipped blindly before the idols, not being sufficiently wise to understand how Jehovah was laying down the foundation for the coming race. 11. O ye of little wisdom, compared with the lords of heaven! How ye are puffed up in judgment, not knowing the race whence ye sprang. Jehovah's gods and lords mold the inhabitants of the earth as clay is molded in a potter's hand. They set them up and show them the way, and say to them, Go. 12. And mortals go on a little while, like a young child that tottereth and falleth. And again the Lord set them up. And man, in ingratitude, forgetteth and denieth his God. 13. The unseen angels lead man and woman together, and say Marry. And they wed, and bring forth of the Lord. Then man inquireth, What meanest thou, bring forth of the Lord? But his judgment is under a cloud. He flattereth himself that Jehovah created him, and then went away. And since then he hath been his own master. 14. O man, what is thy folly? How hast thou found such cunning ways to put off thy Creator? What profit more hast thou to put him away than to try and perceive him in all things? Why wilt thou sing of man who is in darkness, and of the earth, which is but a fraction of the great I Am? Hoppest thou not for wisdom, so that guardian angels may go away and rest? 15. Why shall they stand over thee day and night, to keep away familiars and fetals and druges? Who shall close thy mouth against falsehood, and thy lips against cursing thy Creator? Hoppest thou not, O man, that a wiser age will follow? When shall man learn harmony, symmetry and music? Who will hire a musician that forever putteth his instrument out of tune? Why shall the gods applaud men or angels who live not attuned to the All-Highest? 16. Show me one who is as good as he understandeth to be, that liveth as wisely as his goodness desireth he should. He will understand my words. I can come to him and inspire him with great wisdom. He will comprehend the love that God hath over mortals, and the patience of the toiling lords and angels. 17. Hear me, O man. I will answer thee a great matter. The angels of heaven who are good, labor for those beneath them. This is their work, day and night. Think not that they go away to idleness forever. To the Etherean, industry becometh rest. To those who have attained to be gods there is spontaneous growth forever. Remember this and be wise. To the atmospherean and immortals, idleness of soul leadeth downward forever. Remember this also, and be wise. 18. Behold the rose and the lily. They are perfect in their order. Being one with Jehovah, they painted not themselves. Let thy soul practice with thy Creator, and thou shalt become one with him, even his Son. Find thou the symmetry of flesh, the symmetry of the Spirit, the harmony of music, and consider wisely thy behavior. 19. The star of Jehovah is within thy soul. Feed it, O man, and thou, O angel of heaven, and it will grow to be a god. Rob it, or starve it, and thou shalt remain nothing. It is weak and dim in the vein. It is bright and of great power in him who forgetteth himself in laboring for others. Chapter Vi. 1 Jehovah spake in the light of the throne of God, saying, My son, thou hast set the temples of earth wisely, and thy 10,000 lords have the voice of thy Creator. But, behold, this dawn of Dan hath but 5 years and 200 days. The 5 years are already gone. Call together thy Etherean hosts, and they shall report to thee who shall be the successors to thee and thy lords. I answered, saying, Thy will be done, O Father. 2. So I sent messengers around about the world repeating what Jehovah had commanded. And I added also, when the time of Dan is completed, behold, my hosts shall assemble and go, from whence we shall ascend to our Etherean worlds. Let my messengers invite all the people in all the kingdoms of Embassador to be present. And these things were done. 3. Now, of the 10,000 kingdoms of the lords of heaven and earth of that day, many of them held their places within the corporeal temples of worship, having spiritual thrones within them, where the hosts of angels assembled to counsel on the affairs of mortals, and to advise with them through the prophets and seers. 4. Neither was there a temple in all the world for consulting the spirits and gods but what was usurped by my Etherean hosts. So that when kings or queens came to consult the oracle on matters of war or personal aggrandizement, my hosts answered them not to their own profit, but with the voice of Jehovah. 5. So it turned out, that when the chief false gods and false lords were driven out of the corporeal temples, they lost interest in mortal affairs. And I classified them and made new kingdoms in the lower heaven for them, forming them into confederacies. And they, too, became earnest workers to establish themselves in harmony, symmetry and music. And at the end of the time of hidden there was not one false god nor false lord in Embassador. Chapter 7. 1 Apollo said, Hear the decrees of Jehovah, O ye gods and lords. I, his son, God of 3 worlds, speak. In my speech lieth the wisdom of time, the evidence of 50,000 years. Here is a great matter, O ye gods. Answer it, O ye lords of heaven and earth. A child learneth from that which is around about. A man learneth from that which is around about. A god and a lord learn from that which is around about. Neither can they acquire anything more, forever. Jehovah saith too, I have decreed the breaking up of old foundations. In new creations I provide food for the souls of gods and men. 3. Apollo said, to condense and to expand. To expand and to condense, is this all? Who shall fashion a corporeal world by compressing ether? Or, by standing still, expand his own soul? How long will they be entailed with idle desires, and self-ease, and self-glory? 4. Jehovah saith, when the lower heaven turneth into itself, it soon turneth downward, also. And its cast moldeth the earth born. Look to it, O my sons and daughters, that ye preserve the high estate of heaven. Apollo said 5. To be a god is not all. To be a lord is not all. Ye shall forever invent new stratagems in Jehovah's kingdoms. Your people shall be forever infatuated with continual surprises, or your kingdoms in heaven will go down. 6. Jehovah saith, Behold, I created man, and if he rest constantly, disease shall seize on his life parts. The kingdoms of men on earth that lack aspiration for the people shall bring destruction. To the kingdoms in the lower heaven, the lack of invented, new glories, shall breed up false gods and false lords. 7. Apollo said, to be a weak man, is nothing. To be a weak king, is nothing. To be a weak god, is nothing. But to be strong with Jehovah, furnisheth food for the kingdoms of men and angels. Think not, ye gods and lords, that to be a good god is easy, or to be a good lord is easy, or to be a good corporeal king is easy. He who ruleth in heavenly kingdoms, must forever furnish food for the souls of angels and men. 8. I, Apollo, son of Jehovah, will give you a parable suitable for gods and kings. A multitude go into a forest. One man goeth a little before the rest, and he calleth here. Here. Then he goeth a little further, and he calleth here. Here. And the multitude follow. Whereon, ye reason well, saying, if the leader go too fast for the multitude, they will not follow. And if he go not fast enough, they cannot follow. Wherein, of the last condition, anarchy ensueth, and new leaders are chosen. 9. And these conditions follow all peoples on earth, and in the lower heavens. But the glory of the emancipated heavens, in Etheria, leave in the development of every soul into ripeness and bloom, with none too fast nor too slow, but all as one, and one with Jehovah. 10. Is not this the testimony of the all-person, a ruler of a city, a ruler of a state, a ruler of a kingdom? Without a head to lead, and to govern, what people have been found? Without a God and lords, and kingdoms in heaven, what angels are found? Strollers, beggars, drudges and vampires. He who setteth himself up against the king, what is he? He who setteth himself up against the all-person, what is he? Where is the fruit he hath brought to market? 11. His speech is cunning in denial. His arguments for liberty, the bait of Hada. He crieth out, in justification of his mutiny, liberty, liberty. But he leadeth to inharmony and darkness. After that, he rusheth to the front, crying out, follow me. Follow me. I will lead to truth and light. And he himself becometh a god, but in falsehood, even as by falsehood he denied the true God. 12. A great fact declare I unto you, O gods and lords, a line lieth betwixt the man who hath too much opinion of his own, and he who hath no opinion at all. One is to be pitied, the other censured. Which, judge ye, do the gods pity of these two, and which censure? 13. None could answer Apollo. So he spake further, saying, pity ye him who hath too much opinion of his own. For of all many standest the farthest from Jehovah. But the wise man and wise angel follow the median line betwixt the two. Herein lieth the harmony of a man's soul. Chapter 8. One Apollo, son of Jehovah, said, in Jehovah's name speak I, Apollo, God of Etheria. Hear me, O ye gods and lords. The power of the Father resteth in my soul. My words are of all wisdom. Think of this great matter, the growth of love. As a man loveth his city and his country, what think ye Apollo hath forgotten? Have I not told it in Etheria? I sprang from the red star, the earth. 2. Wherefore shall I not take pride before Jehovah? And hold up my head in Etheria, where I have neighbors that sprang from other stars. Shall a man forget his love because he is a god? Nay, verily. When I was mortal, I loved my neighbors. When I entered the second resurrection, in Atmospheria, I loved all the people of the earth. And when I rose to Etheria, my love expanded to 1,000 worlds. But, of all places, how can I make the earth enter heaven second in the love of my soul? 3. As a mother inventeth diversions and employment for her children, shall I not gather fruit from Jehovah's repositories to feed the Atmospherean heavens? I came, and found ye in a dark forest, with briars and thorns. But, behold, now, O ye gods and lords, the lower heaven hath become a paradise. 4. Let me recall the philosophies I have overthrown. The false gods and false lords said, it is well that there be war and destruction in heaven. Otherwise, it would soon be too full. For they saw not the higher heavens. Their arguments were framed in a dark corner. And, because of their evil inspiration, they gave mortals the same philosophy, saying war is justifiable, lest the earth become too full. For these dark angels shut out from mortals the higher light of faith in Jehovah. justifying themselves in war, and the slaying of whom Jehovah had created alive. By their behavior, thrusting condemnation in Jehovah's face for what Jehovah had done. 5. Neither knew these mortal philosophers that they were under the inspiration of spirits of darkness. Nor would they wait till the earth was full of people, to prove whether their philosophy was true or false. 6. For, as ye of heaven were given to deeds of darkness, your kingdoms reacted on earth, making drunks out of men and women. From which have all these heavens turned from evil ways, and become as stars of glory in Jehovah's universe. 7. Think not that only great thunders and terrible stratagems can govern heaven and earth righteously. For, as one man, in an army, may cause a panic, or one brave man's upraised hand lead a nation on to victory, so can ye, O gods and lords, by wisdom, in the smallest of Jehovah's plans, rule over heaven and earth, for the glory of his everlasting kingdoms. 8. That which I declare unto you, go ye and declare throughout heaven. For the fruit of your teaching shall enrich the earth people, through their guardian spirits. And they shall, likewise, go about preaching amongst themselves. Chapter X. 1. When Apollo, Jehovah's son, had finished his labor, the dawn of Dan, God foresaw that his own resurrection, and his people with him, had come. So he sent his proper officers to the libraries of Embassador, to learn who of all the Etherian hosts should be selected to remain as God, and who as lords, for the next 400 years. 2. In 20 days the examiners returned and came before the throne of God, and the council of Oahspe, chief speaker, said, by the grace of Jehovah, Creator, we stand before thee, God of heaven and earth. We find, by the ancient precepts, adjudged wise in the foundation of Embassador, one highest and most proficient of all the hosts of heaven, to be anointed God for the next 400 years. 3. God said, I remember from Magal, in Suftus, in Etheriah, God of Rebuke and Oahspe, 72. Let the marshals go to him and acquaint him with Jehovah's decrees, in the name of God. And they shall provide suitable conveyance for to come to go, according to his rate. 4. So the marshals, 10,000 in number, besides 10,000 musicians, went and brought before the throne of God, coming in an otevan, prepared for the purpose, and adorned with 1,000 pillars of light. 5. God said, I salute thee, O in the name of Jehovah, Creator. Behold Apollo. 6. Apollo stretched forth his hand, and came and shook hands with him, standing by the throne. Said that I have lived to see this day, O Jehovah, I am blessed indeed. Thy will, O God, and Jehovah's, be done. 7. God said, behold, the dawn of Dan is within 30 days to end, and all who choose, and are prepared for the third resurrection, shall be taken up to Etheriah. Besides thyself, O there are 200,000 Ethereans who have volunteered to remain another 400 years in these atmospherian heavens, and on the earth. From them thou shalt select 1,000 lords, and bestow them with kingdoms, over mortals. 2,000 millions of angels will raise up with me to Etheriah. 8. To thee, O I bequeath 2,000 millions of atmospherians who have been initiated in the second resurrection. And of the first resurrection, 250 millions. And of fetals, 300 millions. And besides these, the inhabitants of the earth, men, women and children, 700 millions. 9. God ceased speaking, and said, Thy will be done, O Jehovah. Thereupon the Ascent sang, and the trumpeters played the march of Apollo, Jehovah's son. Presently, the marshals and messengers filed before the throne. And a light of golden fire came down from Etheriah, cast out by the gods of Helmatia, Orionarch of Taunaya, and it fell about the throne of God, so that many could not look thereon, because of the brilliancy. 10. God raised up, and Apollo by his side. God said, I stretch forth my hand unto thee, O Jehovah. Behold thy son, God of Rebuke, and Etheriah, an earth-born, 40,000 years inhabitant of thy emancipated realms. By thy power, and in thy name, O Jehovah, I proclaim him God of heaven and earth, to bestow thee and thy kingdoms on angels and men. Be with him, O Father, Creator, that he may add unto thy glory, forever. Amen. 11. God took off the triangle, and hung it on God's neck, saying, I now bestow thee with the heirloom of the gods of the red star, the triangle of the ancients. And that thou mayst be still further honored, behold, one higher than I, even Apollo, shall weave a crown for thy head. 12. Apollo walked to the left hand, and raised his hand upward, and there came from unseen space a flame of yellow light, and lodged on his hand, and he turned it but half around, and lo, a crown with sparkling gems stood upon his fingers' ends. Apollo said 13. Incomprehensible all light, weave me a crown for thy Son, God of heaven and earth. And even whilst he spake, it was done, and he placed it on God's head. And God went and sat in the midst of the throne, saying, Throne of thy throne, O Jehovah! All things are thine. For my resting place, to do thy will, this shall be. 14. During the ceremonies, the music was timed accordingly. And when the new God was crowned, the multitude of 1,000 millions applauded with great joy. 15. When all was quiet, God rose up from the throne, saying to Apollo and to him who had been God in Jehovah's name, Come and honor my throne. Accordingly, they both sat down on the right hand of God. 16. God said, In 30 days the dawn of Dan will end. Let the marshals, through the messengers, proclaim the resurrection of 2,000 millions to the ethereal heavens on that day. Proclaim it in all the heavens of the earth, inviting all to come who can. For it shall be a day of the feast of glory. But say not to anyone that there hath been a change of gods, nor that great Apollo will rise also, lest sorrow come upon the people. The marshals then selected messengers, a great number, and sent them throughout the heavens of the earth, proclaiming the commandments of God. 17. God spake further, saying, For 30 days shall the council deliberate on my 10,000 lords, selecting and allotting them. And I will crown them in the name of the Father. 18. Apollo then said, Now will I clothe myself in strange colors, that none shall know me, and during the 30 days I yet tarry, I will go round about the earth, that I may again look upon the star of my birth. 19. And he who had given up the throne said, Thy joy shall be my joy also. I, too, will again visit the star of my birth. 20. Accordingly, God said, Joy be unto ye twain, in Jehovah's name. Behold, I will throw a thick blanket over the throne, and ye shall change your attire, and when I withdraw it, ye shall walk forth unknown. 21. And this was done. Chapter X1. So Apollo visited all the divisions of the earth, and the islands in the ocean. And his traveling attendants, companions and officers made a record of all things they saw, especially those relating to the corporeans. Their manners, sizes, color, habits, education and procreative capacities. And the records were taken with them, to be finally carried to Etheria in the coming ascent. 2. And Apollo and his companions then visited Atmospheria, making like observations of the people in the first and second resurrections, recording the number and kind of nurseries, hospitals, factories, schools and colleges, together with the ascephs, teachers and physicians, nurses, and so on. And this record was also prepared so as to form a brief history of the earth's heaven. 3. On the 28th day, Apollo and his hosts returned to Go, the place of the throne of God in the lower heaven. In the meantime, the word of God commanding the assembly for the ascent of 2,000 million of Jehovah's brides and bridegrooms, had aroused the people of the lower heaven beyond measure. Millions of them never having witnessed an ascent, nor, in fact, had seen an Etherean Adavicit, a ship of fire. 4. On the 29th day, in the evening, a light was seen high up in the firmament, and to the northwest, brilliant, like a star of the first magnitude. Presently, it grew larger and brighter, and shot across toward the southwest firmament, and then began to ascend toward the earth, growing larger and brighter as it came. 5. The people of the lower heaven knew it was the Adavicit of the third resurrection, and they rejoiced before Jehovah, singing and praying. And now the marshals and proper persons for the purpose, commenced to form the groups of brides and bridegrooms of Jehovah. And the groups were arrayed in stars, crescents, squares and circles and ovals, being classified according to their rates in these figures. And the groups had banners, and signals of colored lights, according to their rank in love or intelligence, or good works, or other characteristic virtues. 6. And these groups were arranged into combinations, every combination representing the work done by a sublord or sub-god. And these combinations were again formed into 4 divisions, representing the 4 great divisions of the earth, and the 4 lords, Jehovah's sons. So that when the whole 2,000 millions of spirits were in due form, they characterized harmony, symmetry and music, being the symbol of Apollo, son of Jehovah, god of 3 Etherean worlds, brevet-orian chief. 7. At midnight, the sea of fire, the Adavisit, reached Chinvat, the border of the earth's vortex, just beyond the orbit of the moon, and in size twice the moon's diameter. Here the ship halted for 4 hours, and then again began to descend, and rapidly, fearful to behold, becoming more scarlet within the vortex, but growing larger and definite in figure. 8. And, lo and behold, when the Adavisit drew near, it was in the form and figure of the groups of brides and bridegrooms of Jehovah. It had 50,000 curtains, and 100,000 banners, and the hosts within the ship, 7 millions of souls, bore each a streamer of phosphorescent light, of all colors, shades and tints, and arrayed in symbols of the name, Apollo. 9. Unlike all other Etherean ships of fire that had as yet visited the earth's heavens, it was provided with openings in the bottom, 500,000 in number, which were the places of entrance and exit. And the openings were studded with crystals of ceaseless fire, of all conceivable colors, shades and tints, and sizes and figures, curves, circles, angles, crescents, and so on. And up within the openings, were the crystal and opaque chambers, provided for the heirs of the third resurrection. And yet, within these chambers, were the reports of the guardian angels, of the lies and good work heretofore done by every man and woman of all the 2,000 million who were to ascend to Jehovah's higher heavens. But in all the records there was not recorded one evil thing, or dark deed, or selfish thought. For of these things the ascended hosts had long since purged themselves, till they were gems of the pure light of the Father of all. High up within the ship were the beams and network of timber and ropes and arches. And around about the whole ship was the photosphere of its power, so that the whole Adavisit was like a crystal ship within a globe of phosphorescent light. And yet, in fact, the ship was the true light, and the angels the light of that light, whilst the photosphere was really the shell of darkness made reflective. 10. This, then, was the size of the Adavisit. 2,000 miles, east and west, and north and south, diameters. And 7,000 miles high. And the ship within it was 100 miles, east and west, and north and south, diameters. And 200 miles high. 11. As the earth is opaque, with a transparent vortex around it, so not so, but opposite, is the structure of an Etherean Adavisit, being light and habitable within as well as without, like the Etherean worlds in the firmament. As Jehovah maketh worlds, and sendeth them forth in the places of his firmament, so, in imitation of him, his Etherean gods and goddesses make Adavisits to traverse space from star to star, and from one Etherean region to another. Great in wisdom and power are Jehovah's Etherean gods and goddesses. Yet they, too, were once but men and women, with corporeal bodies. 12. Jehovah said, I have given power to spirits of the newly dead to clothe themselves from the atmosphere with corporeal semblances of flesh and blood. And, to my exalted atmospherian angels, I have given power to clothe themselves from in forms of light. But, to my exalted Etherean angels, I have given power to clothe their hosts with ships of fire, and Otevans, and Adavisits. Chapters I. 1 CVENTI, Marshal is for the hosts of Apollo, with 10,000 marshals and 50,000 respondents of ceremonies, made ready to receive the hosts of the Adavisits, commanded by Simiad, goddess of Doegi, in Etheria, goddess of Node and Rak, in Gea, 38, well known to Apollo, and to Pheja, god of Norse, long residents of in Etheria. 2. Simead was a small woman, dark, and of deep love, most jovial of goddesses, and had long looked forward with joy to her pleasure of bringing so large a ship to deliver 2,000 million of Jehovah's brides and bridegrooms into ethereal worlds. And so, when the Adavisit was about to land and go, Simead looked out from the clusters of central stars, the ornaments of the throne within the ship, to see the hosts who were assembled beneath, and joyously clapped her hands with delight, whereupon she was saluted by Apollo and Phaedra, and by God and his lords. 3. Presently, the mighty vessel landed and anchored fast. And the ship of Apollo was moved up aside and made fast to the Adavisit. Meantime, Simead came forth out of the ship, and was received in the arms of Cventi, Marshalless of Apollo, and then proceeded to the throne of God. 4. All the while, the musicians had been playing and singing. And the music of the lower heaven was thus united with the music of the upper heaven. 5. God said, Welcome, O daughter of Jehovah. Come thou and honor my throne, and his name. 6. Simead said, By the grace and love of Jehovah, am I come, O God. And to thee, O Apollo, most wonderful of earth-born gods, how can I express my boundless love? And to thee, O Phaedra, long-enduring Son of Jehovah, my soul is as a twin, for the glory of our everlasting Creator. 7. Behold, I am come in Jehovah's name to wed these 2,000 million brides and bridegrooms to Jehovah. 8. Phaedra said, Thy will and Jehovah's be done. And now they shook hands, as is the custom of gods and goddesses, and Simead went and sat on the throne, saluting all the assemblage by making the sign of Jehovah's name with her right hand, which was answered by 3,000 million spirits. And now the musicians played and sang the stars of Jehovah. Meanwhile, the all-light began to descend thick and fast on Simead's head, so brilliant that many could not look thereon. 9. And Jehovah spake through Simead, saying, I blow my breath upon a corporeal world, and man springeth forth into life, the highest of my created lights. In the womb of me, I fashion his spirit. When he is shapely and white, I deliver him. I open the heaven of suns, and warm his soul. Brighter than diamonds he cometh forth. Male and female come they, as stars for my everlasting worlds. Dressed as brides and bridegrooms for my chambers of light and love. In my arms shall they be blessed forever. In my mansions rejoice forever. 10. The respondents said, being led by the ethereal hosts, I am thy bride or bridegroom, O Jehovah. My soul findeth love in thee only, forever. 11. Thou, my Father, O Jehovah. I come to thee to abide forever. 12. From me, my mother, the earth, who conceived me, I rise me up and go, forever. 13. All praise to thee, O Jehovah. And to thee, O God of earth and heaven. And to ye, O lords of the earth, praise forever. 14. Thy lords, O Jehovah, raised me up. How can I render them joy for my stubbornness of heart? And thy God, for my second resurrection. 15. How hast thou made us brothers and sisters, O Jehovah, and given to me a higher world to abide in, forever. 16. O, joy of my soul! To thee am I beholden, O Father, everlasting Creator. 17. Jehovah said, Behold me, O brides and bridegrooms. I am the all that is within all, and over all. Members of my body are all things under the sun, seen and unseen, boundless, forever. I give them to you for your inheritance, forever. 18. Response: Who can give like unto thee, O Jehovah? Not only gavest thou myself, but sent thy gods and lords to me to teach me how to live to enjoy thy fullness, forever. 19. I will rise to thy immortal kingdoms, and learn the mysteries of thy glory and wisdom, O Jehovah. And when I am strong, I will go forth to them who are beneath me, and raise them up, to rejoice, forever. 20. Jehovah said, Laborers with me, helpmates and companions, forever. With ye I wed, from everlasting to everlasting. 21. Response: With thee we wed, helpmates, forever. in the glory of thy worlds, without end. 22. Jehovah said, mine are all harmony, all symmetry, all love, and will endure forever. 23. Response: when I was in darkness, I fed on hate, and anger, and war, and lust. But thou hast taught me harmony, and symmetry, and love, and I shall indulge in them forever. 24. Jehovah said, receive ye my mantles and my crowns, O my beloved. The darkness is come and gone. The rain is dried up, and my flowers are blooming for you, my beloved. 25. Response: glory be to thee, my Creator and Preserver. All hail to thy wondrous works, O Jehovah. In all my giving I cannot attain to thee, forever. Thy crown shall shine on my behavior, world without end. Amen. 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 26. Jehovah, thou art mine, forever. Amen. 27. I am thine, O Jehovah, forever. Amen. Amen. Chapter 12. 1. The rites of the resurrection were completed, the whole of which would make a book, were the words written down. And as for the music, for which there were 500,000 singers and players, scarce a conception of it can be given to mortals. And when the light of the throne of God broke away a little, God announced 6 hours recreation. Whereupon, all the angels of Go and of the Etherean heavens, mingled together joyfully. 2. And after this 4, behold, the end of the dawn of Dan had come. Apollo, mightiest of all, rose up, and waved his hand in the sign, in Jehovah's name, and stood aside from the throne of God. After Apollo, Simeon rose up, and gave the same sign, followed by Phejah. And when these 3 stood aside, high raised, on the floor of the throne, so that all the assembled millions could see them, so hushed were all things, like as if time had come to an end. 3. Then filed in front the 10,000 lords and lordesses, they who had once been false gods and false lords, and, of the ancient times, arrayed in such gorgeous attire, now robed in plain white, and without ornaments. 4. The marshals opened the arches of the Embassador, but yet not a soul moved from his or her place. 5. Then great Apollo, and Simeon, and Phejah, came down and sat at the foot of the throne, more loved than all the gods who had as yet visited the earth and her heavens. 6. God came down from the throne and took Apollo's hand, saying, arise, O son of Jehovah, and go thy way. Apollo rose up, himself in tears, and stood aside. God now took the hand of Simeon, saying, arise, O daughter of Jehovah, and go thy way. Next he raised up the long-tried Phejah, when lo, both he and God burst into tears, and fell in each other's arms. Phejah, of few words at most, was last to slack the fond embrace. And then he and great Apollo, and Simeon, light of heaven, broke loose and marched forth to the Etherean ship of fire. God resumed the throne, blinded by his tears. 7. Now fell the mantles of Jehovah, and his crowns, on the 2,000 million brides and bridegrooms. The awakening light of the Etherean firmament bespoke Jehovah's awful presence. The hosts moved with one accord, and presently entered into the Embassador, amidst a shower of Etherean flowers. 8. The marshals signaled, for the dawn was ended. The bright Simeon stretched forth her slender hand and arm to Jehovah, saying, by thy power, O Father, I command. Arise. Arise. Advocate. Arise. 9. And the mighty vessel, and the vessel of Apollo, adjoined, arose up from Go, rocking, rising, and moving to the music of 1,000,000 trumpeters and singers, joined by the Ascenors of the lower heavens. Higher and higher rose the Etherean fire ships, turning and rising, passing beyond the vortex of the earth, beyond Chunvet, out into the firmament of Etheria, higher and higher, till all was lost in the distance. Chapter 13. 1. Jehovah spake in the light of the throne of God, saying to the council of Go, heaven of my heaven, hear ye the words of your Creator, O my beloved, sing songs to Apollo and his lords. Let my people rejoice, for the glory of my Son is upon them. 2. From my kingdom is the light and the life, Out of my wisdom Apollo hath come. Sing to him, O ye lords of heaven. Let my angels rejoice in his name, for he shall abide forever. 3. Created I him for the glory of angels and men. In his idols and images shall my people behold the harmony of my beloved. With mine own hands, molded I the ankles and feet, and well-rounded thighs. Behold the arms of my son, no longer than to the thighs, and with dimples, and small wrists. 4. His neck is straight and slender, and smooth and round, like the hidden on an altar. And his shoulders like hewn stone, polished and tapering, like a woman's, who goeth not to war. 5. His instep is high. He can spring like a deer, swift as the wind. He sitteth not on his haunches all day, with his hands down, like a druck that is tired, waiting for food. He fleeth to the plain and the forest on his swift feet. 6. Proclaim ye Apollo in heaven and on earth. He is risen. Higher than the sun is the holy begotten of Jehovah. Out of the virgin me is he come, holy. In symmetry and music, there is none like Apollo. 7. She was my betrothed from the foundation of the world. Spouse of your Creator, O God. Her name was me, mother of mine holy begotten Son. 8. They were without shapeliness before me. They lolled about on earth. They lolled in heaven. On their haunches waited they hungrily. 9. The Virgin bowed down. For her firstborn was the Redeemer of the world. In stone, and wood, and copper, and gold, and silver, is he stronger than 10 cities. And wiser than 10,000 men. 10. He cometh to the young mother's dream, and shapeth her unborn, with limbs like a racer, and with long hair on the head. He standeth in the idol, and knoweth the mother's prayer every day. Who calleth on the name, Apollo, calleth on the Father, Creator of all things. 11. Blessed are the lords of Apollo. Blessed are the sons and daughters of Apollo. Blessed are they that bring forth in shapeliness like my son, Apollo. 12. This mark have I put up before all women under the sun. The young women before marriage. And before the young men before marriage. 13. Choose ye of them in the likeness of Apollo. Your heirs shall glorify your Creator. 14. Apollo is my judge. He sitteth on my right hand. Swifter than an arrow is his judgment on a woman's firstborn. Chapter 14. 1 Jehovah spake from the light of the throne of God, saying, Hear the words of your Creator, O ye counselors of heaven. 2. They spin and weave and make clothes. They learn in the places of learning. Neither do I condemn them. 3. But my physicians are tired. My nurses are tired. My teachers are tired. Be wise, O my sons and daughters. Who hath reformed a beggar by giving to him? What physician preventeth sickness by healing? 4. They bring forth in deformity on the earth, and ye must cure them in heaven. They squat on their haunches on earth, and they squat the same way in heaven, and ye must cure them. 5. Go ye to the root of the matter, O my beloved. Send ye down to the kingdoms of my lords, and say to them, Thus saith Jehovah, Follow them, O my lords. Double the number of Ashers, double the Louis. Leave no young man alone. Leave no young woman alone. Keep over them day and night. Give them visions and dreams of Apollo. For I am concerted in heaven and on earth to remold the forms of the earth-born. 6. Jehovah said, Hear your Creator, O go. Make 7 more plateaux for the second resurrection. Out of the idolatry of my son, Apollo, will I beautify the inhabitants of the earth. And the cast and mold of men and of women shall become a great power. 7. Jealousies will overspread the earth. Jealousies will rise in the first resurrection. Make 7 more plateaux in the second resurrection, and sort the Essenes in the hour of birth. 8. God and the council perceived. And so God appointed workmen, and fulfilled the commandments of Jehovah. And he established 700 tributary kingdoms of the second resurrection belonging to Go. 9. These sub-kingdoms were provided with sub-gods, second in rank below the lords, of whom there were 10,000 who had direct supervision over mortals. And the lords had every one a sufficiency of guardian angels, ashers, and luis, masters of generations, so that they could direct any required number to such mortals as they chose. 10. The lords mostly established their heavenly kingdoms in the temples where mortals came to worship. And by inspiration, they established spirit chambers near the altars, where the prophets sat to learn the decrees of the Lord. Hither the luis came to receive their appointments over mortals, for the purpose of bringing about marriages acceptable before Jehovah. 11. The affairs of the sub-gods were, however, holy with matters in heaven, save when commanded by the lords for special work. 12. And it came to pass that mortals, and the affairs of mortals, were directed and governed by the decrees of the lower heavens, and these again by the ethereal heavens, which were of Jehovah direct. 13. So Jehovah changed the forms of the earth-born. But they became worshippers of Apollo, accrediting to one another Jehovah's perfection in them, according to the form and figure of the flesh. And because of the idolatry of the women for Apollo, their children were born of good flesh, and shapely. So that, in 400 years, the hair on their heads grew long and straight, and men began to have beards. Neither considered any young man any virtue in a young woman so important as her form. Nor did young women value any virtue in man so great as a well-molded form. 14. And when mortals died, and their spirits entered the first resurrection, half the labor of the asaphs, the receiving angels, was accomplished. 15. So God changed the Ascent period to 3 years, save for the heirs of cousins, and uncles, and aunts, which was left at 5 years. Chapter XV. 1. So perfect was the way of heaven, that, at the end of 400 years, God and his lords, and his sub-gods, had ready for the third resurrection, of grade 88, 8,500 million souls for Jehovah's harvest. 2. So Apollo sent Adova, division goddess of Reth, in Coke, in Etheria, down to the lower heaven, to deliver God and his hosts. And they were thus raised up to Etheria in a sea of fire, and made one with Jehovah. 3. In like manner, was the next government in the lower heaven and on the earth. And the next deliverance in Dan was 10,000 million souls, of grade 65. 4. In like manner was the next administration in the lower heaven and on the earth, and the deliverance was 10,000 millions, of grade 50. 5. In like manner was the next administration on the earth and in the lower heaven, and the deliverance was 10,000 millions, of grade 38. So Apollo commanded these to be delivered in the Augean fields of Oth, in Sanach and Orant, for they were unsuited for Etheria. 6. In like manner was the next administration in the lower heaven and on the earth, and the deliverance was 16,000 millions. But they were of grade 24. So Apollo commanded them to be delivered in the nebulous straits of Kappa-Ochkiaka, for further development. 7. In like manner was the next administration in the lower heaven, but not so on the earth. For the kings and queens carried the idolatry too far, and mortals took to destroying ill-formed children and cripples, thus casting the ills of mortality into heaven. So there was no deliverance for the last Dan of Apollo's cycle. And Jehovah received no harvest. 8. Thus ended the cycle of Apollo, being 2,800 years. End of the Book of Apollo.